Mr. Brian O'Loughlin.
Mr. Daniel Campion.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm well. I'm really well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I think, and actually someone asked me yesterday if we'd fallen out, because I think this is our first podcast in...
Did someone genuinely ask you that?
Someone asked me that, yeah. And they were very tentative about how they asked me. They said, Brian O'Loughlin, something happened there? It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, it did happen.
He had a child and then I had a child.
Yeah.
And we just
That's kind of put us in the gap, because we haven't done a podcast for
I think 4 or 5 months.
Really?
Yeah.
What was our last one? What was the last one?
I don't remember the last one.
Okay.
Exactly. But anyway, today, thank you for joining me here for the first of a kind, actually, where you might notice that we are in a slightly different venue today. Very kindly being hosted by Mr. Al Mazer in Atelier, I think I'm pronouncing that right now, his art gallery in town. So thank you very much, Al. And we are starting a new type of project with this. We won't give too much away just now. We'll let people enjoy the episode. But we are going to do a little recap of our year. We're going to keep it nice and concise, but we're going to go through some of the lessons that we have learned.
I was thinking about this because did we do lessons last year?
That
when? Was that at the end of the year?
I think so.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was meant to listen back to it. I didn't.
Did you not know?
No.
No, neither did
because
I.
also, did we have lessons of what? That was a different episode. So sorry, continue. Go on.
So the whole idea behind this episode for listeners is that we are going to take the most kind of pertinent lessons that we've learned in our personal, professional, whatever lives, and share them in a way that might be of use to anybody listening now. New year, new me is the kind of cliche people use, but it is a time for people to kind of reflect and plan for the year going forward. We will be doing this ourselves we will have already done it by the time this has been released, and planning for 2024 from a professional point of view, business point of view. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned preceding all of these is if you don't have some sort of system, which I learned from you, for reflecting and reviewing, you're going to continue making the same mistakes. You're going to continue down a direction maybe that you haven't planned, you don't want to go, but by reflecting and by having some sort of strategy going forward, you can actually take control of your life and empower yourself, which, as we all know, is the motto here at the Prymal podcast.
100%. Well, and awareness. Damien Brown always talked about the idea of awareness. So
Yes.
I think that's all we're trying to garner through that reflective practice is some level of awareness.
Absolutely. So, very structured episode today.
Okay.
We have 3 lessons each. Don't know what you're saying. Like I'm explaining this to you for the first
Yeah,
time.
I know.
We'll discuss this in detail. But we're going to share a lesson each. We're going to discuss it for the guts of about 10 minutes. We're going to go through some takeaways, elaborate a little bit on why we've chosen these as our lessons from this particular year. And hopefully then by the end, people will have some sort of framework that might resonate with you to move forward into 2024, become an absolute animal.
Well, rock and roll, baby. Let's
Right,
go.
Dan and Brian, would you like me to start?
Yeah, go to the first one.
I will start. The biggest one for me, probably the biggest one on my list here, I'll decide at the end, is the importance of saying no.
Yeah. I wonder, have we talked about this on podcast with you, like struggling to say
We
no?
have probably talked about this in small snippets, but I don't think we've ever focused on it exclusively. And I would say, and you can give me your input on this as someone who's helped in my mentoring and with some guidance in terms of business and stuff like that, probably one of my biggest problems over the years is being a bit of a yes man.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, and nothing to do from a business perspective. You're just a lovely man, and you always say yes, but it's to your detriment, I would
Nice
say.
guys finish last. Now I know what that means.
Well, there you are. So you're not a nice guy anymore.
Now I'm a bit of a bollocks.
Well, talk to me then. Why is this a big deal in terms of this year, and what have you learned?
What I have learned, and it's a conversation I've actually had quite a lot over the last few months with different people who are embarking on journeys like this, business, project, content creation, whatever it might be, is when you start, you're obviously extremely eager to do the thing. And when it's business, you want to bring more clients in and earn more money and do more things. So it's all excitement and enthusiasm. And as part of that, again, if you have a good nature, you also want to help people. You want to do things for people. You want to build a good name. You want to build a reputation, etc. So you do a lot of everything all the time, and you're constantly just saying yes to every opportunity that presents itself. And as you know, and I've figured out now, when you put yourself in a space like this, opportunities constantly present themselves. There's an abundance of opportunities all the time. And if you say yes to all of them, they kind of all suffer. So I have found, and I'm still struggling with, an overabundance of things I'm involved in and projects I'm doing and work I'm taking on and clients I'm working with, which means that it's very hard to maintain a standard for all of those things, and it's not protecting my energy at all. So I have less to give to the other areas of my life, family, friends, and other commitments I want to get involved in. So the importance for me of saying no is it allows me to be way more selective in terms of where I place my focus and my energy. So basically, I decide what's important. I can pick what's important because I've said no to the things that aren't as important to me. So it's prioritizing, basically. And it's the old 80-20. I've always struggled to figure out what the 20 is. So I've just said yes to the 100% of everything all the time. People will experience burnout. They'll allow other areas of their life to fall to wreck and ruin. Could be relationships, could be children, could be projects, could be work, could be health. all because there's an inability to say no to other things in their life which take precedence. So that's the kind of overarching kind of concept for me of this. This morning, Cody Sanchez
That's
just
the name.
came to me. James is
Okay.
here in the background here. Cody Sanchez, James. I was trying to think of Cody's name earlier on. Cody Sanchez is a female business owner, entrepreneur, buys and sells businesses. And she puts out a lot of information for other business owners to try and help them. And she sent in her newsletter just this morning, I found this quote. She sent out a newsletter and there was a list of 10 books she recommends people read. And in one of those books, and I haven't read this book, but there's a quote, which is her favorite quote from this book, which kind of encapsulates this point for me. So I'm going to read it for you now, Brian.
Go ahead.
Every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, this will happen. You will resent people. You will do a bad job. You'll have less energy for the things you were doing a good job on. You will make less money, and yet another small percentage of your life will be used up, burned up, a smoke signal to the future saying, I did it again. That is like fire in my brain. I can feel the pain of that, this smoke signal saying, I did it again. Because the problem with not saying no and saying yes all the time is as soon as you say it, you regret it. All the way through the thing you're doing, you regret it. Let me maybe take it out of the business world for a second. Say somebody has invited you to something that you don't really want to go to, and you say yes because you feel bad or you feel obligated. Now, I'll come back to the emotional side of that in a second. And you go. The second you say yes, you regret it. And everyone listening will be familiar with this. Oh, why did I fucking say yes? I felt pressure. You'll not look forward to it the whole way up, so you'll be distracted by it. It'll suck energy out of your life. You'll go and you won't enjoy it. You'll resent the people that you're there with, and because you'll have built up this narrative in your head that this fucking person wants me to do this thing for them, and then you won't do a good job at it. And because you focus so much energy on that, you're not doing a good job on the other things that you've been looking forward to or going to. So that's an example of it. You multiply that by like 20 different things that you've said yes to that you resent. Like, for example, me taking jobs I don't really want to do because I'm like, oh, well, I need the money, or it's another client, etc. You immediately resent it. The money is never enough to make up for the energy that you have to pump into this thing. It distracts you from all the other things you're supposed to be focusing on, you want to be focusing on. You're annoyed then, you resent the client because you're like, I have to do this fucking job for this person that you said yes to. And then you bring that home, and then you're kind of short with the family and you don't have the energy for that because you're putting so much energy and effort into this thing that you didn't want to do in the first place. So this whole quote here kind of sums it up for me. Like, yes to something you don't want to do. You know you don't want to do it. You resent the people. That's perfect. You'll do a bad job because you don't actually want to be there. You'll have less energy for the things you were doing a good job on because you're putting energy into this thing. You'll make less money because obviously it's probably not worth the money anyway. You're spending you're overspending time on something because it's not particularly what you do or what you want to do. So you don't have that drive or energy or motivation. So you're overspending time. And yet another small percentage of your life will be used up, burnt up, a smoke signal to the future saying I did it again. Time is limited. We've only got a certain amount of time. So if you're dedicating it to this thing, you're never getting that time back again.
Yeah,
and then the smoke signal is like, it's just this endless cycle. And every time you do it, it's like it's almost like that shame thing. Like, I fucking did it again. I feel bad.
So the question I have for you then is, why is saying no so difficult? Like, what stops us saying no to things that we don't want to do?
I'll speak from personal experience.
Okay.
Fear. If I say no, I'll have a bad reputation. This person will tell other people and my business will suffer. And you catastrophize everything in your head. So it's not my business will suffer, my business will fail. I won't earn enough money. What if another opportunity like this doesn't come around again? I'm a people pleaser. I have internalized fucking lack of or imposter syndrome or insecurities in myself that if I say yes to this person, they'll like me. All these different reasons. So there's business reasons, there's human reasons. I think it's a combination of all those things. And that's what it was in me.
And you said it as well there, oftentimes like saying yes kind of creates an obligation as well. So it's almost like you're just doing this thing that you've always done.
Yeah.
Because it's just what you do. It's an old commitment or it's an old habit that is very hard to get rid of.
Exactly.
Because you're just saying yes.
Yeah.
It's just constant.
And also, if you say yes to this thing, at least you're doing something, you're busy. If you say no to this thing, you have to fill that time with something productive. And what if I can't find something productive to do? There's that fear element there as well. If I say no to this, well, what else am I going to do? This person is off that wants this from me. They want me to engage in this. What if I say no to this and I can't do anything else?
So this is obviously a big lesson for the year gone by. So does this mean that you're saying no more now?
Yes. So I've actually learned, I realized I started to learn this lesson in my personal life with my family. I say no to a lot of other things now, like nights out and social events and stuff like that, because I would rather spend that limited amount of time I have free with my family And it's nothing to do with I don't like the people who invited me to the things, because this is where it gets weird, right? This is where it gets squirrely. If someone invites you to something, you say no. A lot of other people feel, well, you're letting us down, you're letting me down. Now, I'm going to put a caveat on this, because I sent you a link the other day to a Naval Ravikant a reel that he put up, and it's really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because he's basically saying say no to absolutely every single thing in
Pretty
your life,
much, yeah.
because none of that's your problem. So I call this a Gogginism, like David Goggins. Take the bits of that work for you, and don't take the rest. You don't have to be as extreme as that. But in my personal life, saying no to all those social situations mean that time I can then direct towards my family. If I'm saying yes to all those things, I don't have the time for my family. It doesn't mean I don't like those people. And if those people are offended by the fact that I'm not going to go there, like if there's a specific occasion like a wedding, or someone really needs help or support, obviously I'm going to say yes. I'm there to support my friends and family. But if it's a party, or if it's a social gathering or something like that, it's that person's issue. If they're upset that you're not attending, that's their problem, not necessarily your problem. Now, these are Naval's words, and I agree with the sentiment of it. So 90% of social occasions I don't go to, because I'd rather spend the time with my family. They're the people who I love and are important to me. It's not that I don't care about those other people, but I do prioritize my family. And anybody who says it should be the other way around and I should prioritize all of these people inviting me to all of these events over my family, which I value most, I don't necessarily agree with that.
And is this changing for you because you are understanding what you value more? Like, why is it like, now that you're starting to...
Do you know what I'm understanding? And again, you help me with this, is my own time, how valuable that is actually. Because it's valuable to me, it's also valuable to the people that I love. So if I don't respect my own time, I'm not valuing myself, and I'm not valuing my family. Because I'm allowing my energy to be dragged away to all these other things that I say that I don't value as much.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I learned. I learned that I actually can respect myself, whereas before I was like, I have to respect everybody's time ahead of my own. And you'll have heard a lot of business owners say this: if you don't respect your own time, you can't respect anybody else's time. It's like if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. Like, you have to respect your time first, because if you don't, it'll just be dragged in a million different directions.
It's a funny one though, with saying no, particularly as a business owner, to clients, or putting boundaries in place. Like, it can feel difficult to do initially. And I do say no a lot now. And the reason I say no is because I burnt myself out.
Yeah.
I had no choice, by just saying yes all the time. And eventually my nervous system was like, go look, mate, you're fucking exhausted and you can't handle life. Fucking sit down, literally, for months on end, because you're in rag order.
Yeah.
But it's a funny one though, saying no. Like I said, I think if you get clear on what you want to do, again, a vision of who you want to be, again, what you value, it becomes a little bit easier. But I have a say no framework, which I'm sure I've mentioned in the past. But the first thing I always recommend is to try and build awareness around what you're saying yes to. So if you're struggling with going like, well, what do I have to say no to, or do I want to say no? When you say yes to something, you can just say, I'm saying yes because. And what's the because? So because I love this, I definitely want to do it.
Okay, yeah.
I've always done it, I feel bad. You're just trying to build awareness, going like, well, do I say yes to things that I genuinely want to say yes to? So you don't have to start saying no yet, potentially, because it's difficult. But can you build awareness around, am I actually doing things I want to do?
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised. Sometimes, actually a lot of times.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really good.
We haven't shot a video on that yet, have you?
What? No.
That's the next one we're going to shoot.
That's something like that, is it? That's the content they should be doing, is it? That kind of content?
No, we're going to shoot a say no frame, because it's a really interesting piece of content.
Yeah, but that say no framework has been a game changer for me. And again, we teach clients an awful lot, because it is more about taking things away as opposed to adding. You mentioned there the 20%. Yeah. Like, it is a 20%. And me and you are going to kind of dive into that deeper next year in terms of our own personal and professional lives. A lot of stuff we do is just unnecessary. But again, it's obligation, it's old habits. That's difficult. It is difficult to burn it away, I suppose.
Beautiful. Thank you for your input on that. That's point number one.
Okay, daily. So is it my turn?
It's your turn.
Okay, so my lesson then for 2023, and it's similar to yours, I suppose, like in the sense of allowing me to live my life and control the chaos, I suppose, are keystone habits. Did I mention keystone habits before?
Yes.
Oh, did I?
I don't know on the podcast, but you've mentioned
Okay,
it.
sorry. But I have it written out here what a keystone habit is. A keystone habit is essentially the routines or the practices by which someone operates. They mark the baseline of what you do, normally without kind of willpower or persuasion. And they have a ripple effect for the rest of your life, essentially. So a really simple one is exercise. Like, we know if you exercise, you're good physically, you're better mentally. Me personally, I'm a better father, I'm a better business owner, I'm a better leader. But keystone habits, I would have looked at normally as a positive. But then this year, I got rid of alcohol. So I realized that was actually a keystone habit in my life that was kind of a negative. And it wasn't something that I kind of thought about in the sense of, as a habit, or even something that's keystone. So keystone, and actually I found this out. Do you know where keystone comes from?
No.
Where do you think it comes from?
Ancient days.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. It comes from architecture. So the keystone of a building in the archway.
Is the central stone that holds the whole thing together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the idea is that essentially gets everything together.
Yeah.
And it pretty much just makes that structure, well, indestructible. And without it, it's kind of nothing. But then just think of something like that, because this keystone habit can be negative or positive. And then alcohol, for me, I've mentioned obviously in the past with the on the podcast, it's not a huge issue for me, but the intention behind what I was doing I was just getting pissed drunk. And it was actually taking away from my energy, from my consistency, from who I wanted to be, how I wanted to live. And that keystone habits now, I always looked at things that allowed me to be positive and go-getting and kind of succeed. But there's a lot of keystone habits that, again, out of obligation, out of past experience, that I didn't really kind of build awareness around.
And would you say that alcohol was a keystone habit because it was a central part of your social interactions?
Yes, I suppose it was. And also as well, like, it wasn't as much a part of my social interaction over the last couple of years. But again, it was for 10, 15 years previous to that.
Yeah.
That was all it was. And now it wasn't. But yet it was still a keystone habit in the sense of I was just doing it, yet there wasn't really any positive impact for me with it. So the keystone habit now, because I'd always talk about this and you try to get it. So a good keystone habit for me. So Gigi, my little second baby, is 2 months old. I've got fuck all sleep.
Congratulations, by the way, officially on the podcast.
And you, congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
But she's 2 months old, I've got fuck all sleep. So a keystone habit I've introduced is ice baths. And the ice bath, again, for the resiliency, for the physical health benefits, but actually just to wake me up and make sure that I can kind of trudge through a difficult period of my life of a lack of sleep. And then that's where the alcohol comes in for me as well, is that I'm moving into a phase of my life. I'm 37, actually. When this comes out, I'm 37 right now. I'm not 36, but I'm 37.
When's your birthday?
Now. Monday.
This Monday?
This Monday.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. What
I'm 37. Nothing. But the idea is, though, with this, like me being a father, me moving into my 40s, I do still want to progress. So these keystone habits, either the old ones that are negative and no longer kind of serve me, or these new ones that I need to integrate in order to handle the responsibility or the difficulty of life so I can progress, are just kind of everything. And the reason I'm talking about keystone habits is because I have a quote here. I write on quotes an awful lot. And around progress, it says, on the path to progress, it is imperative to maintain order. And the idea with a keystone habit, it just gives you order. So when it gets a bit chaotic, I can hop into an ice bath, I can do my exercise, I can leave alcohol, or I could rush through alcohol, I suppose, in the sense of I could use that as a stressor as well. But you need to maintain order as opposed to try to find the answer of this issue or problem today. So if I can fall back to keystone habits, well, it's going to ground me and allow me to kind of progress in life.
Yeah, okay. And do you have a strategy for developing or building keystone habits? Because habits are hard. I imagine keystone habits are probably even harder to...
Well, even again, a keystone habit for me, exercise is quite easy. So you'll have one or two keystone habits, but then you can look at it as well as a keystone goal. You ever hear this?
No.
I learned it from Benjamin Hardy. I think it was in that book. I think it was Benjamin Hardy. A keystone goal is, say, the biggest goal that you want to achieve. Because if you can get very clear of what the goal is, then you can start to put systems in place again to get there.
Okay.
So it could be maybe a number of a business or money you want to earn or clients or something that you want to do. But that allows me then to instill good keystone habits in order to be successful towards that goal.
Okay.
That kind of make sense?
Yeah. But I suppose what I'm asking is for people listening, like in terms of building those habits, do you have a strategy that you use for each? Does it depend on the habit, or do you have, right, I'm going to build a new habit around nutrition, exercise, whatever.
Okay.
Here's my strategy for building this keystone habit.
Yes and no. All I have is a keystone habit. Again, I'll fall back to exercise.
Okay.
And what does exercise give me? So if I look at the habits that I have ingrained, is that giving me what exercise is giving me?
Okay.
So if it's not a positive thing, well, again, for like alcohol, well, do I get rid of it?
Yeah.
Do I reduce it? And if it's something else, again, like ice bath, am I introducing that and seeing, am I getting that same benefit and positive? And it becomes a kind of keystone habit.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely making sense, yeah.
So, yeah, what I would say that is for the year ahead is looking towards 1, 2, or 3 keystone habits. That if you do have a ripple effect and have a positive impact for the rest of your life, and then can you look at 1, 2, or 3 keystone habits that have a negative impact? And could you potentially either reduce or pull back from them?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it's funny because I think we're going to probably come to this conclusion after each one of these points. It all revolves around self-awareness and reflection. Without having a process for reflecting, you're not going to be able to identify those negative or positive keystone habits. And you're not going to know what areas are, what the areas are that you maybe are deficient in that you want to establish for the next year. So this whole idea of self-awareness.
And you're saying as well about self-awareness. I think that's why people don't reflect potentially, is because then if they have to define what they're doing, they might feel bad.
That was always my problem.
Really?
Yeah, and it was always why I never liked any sort of tests, like even fitness tests and stuff like that. Because if you don't know, then you can fool yourself. You can tell yourself, yeah, I'm probably super fit. Oh yeah, I probably have all this sorted out. That year probably wasn't as bad. If you reflect at the end of a year, you might not like what you find,
Yeah.
and we don't want that.
Yeah, but isn't it like you have to be truthful if you want to progress? Like,
But it's the same. Again, a lot of these conversations revolve around this. Absolutely, you have to be truthful, and if you want to progress, but it's hard.
oh, it's definitely. I'm not saying it's fucking really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the shadow work. It's like the looking inwards. Looking inwards is hard. You'd rather look outwards. You'd rather it be somebody else's fault or problem. You'd rather outsource that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's the self-awareness part is huge.
I suppose the difference with self-awareness as well then is like you don't have to necessarily act on what you learn, but you can't lose what you learn. So once you have that awareness,
You can never unlearn it.
it's always there.
Yeah.
And then again, we talked about that in the past, but that pain getting so great. So maybe you're just not ready for that change. But that awareness then, if it just keeps coming in your face and you keep seeing it.
This actually links nicely with my third point. So we'll circle back around to this in my third point. Any more to add on that particular point?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Go
perfect.
ahead.
Thank you for that. Point number 2 from me. You can't think your way out of a thinking problem.
Yes, I heard you saying this.
Yeah, so this was a concept I always had, but was actually put into words by Andrew Huberman. Most of us are probably familiar with the concept of not being able to think your way out of a thinking problem, but I will elaborate on what this actually means. I feel like when we get overwhelmed, we get anxious, there's an issue in our life, we do try and sit down and work out what we can do. We try and think about the problem and think about the solution and try and figure it out. And it ends up inevitably almost every single time in a spiraling effect. You overthink the problem then. You become more obsessed with it. You don't necessarily come up with an answer, but you come up with, many more problems and many more reasons why this is the worst thing that's ever happened to you in the entire world. And the solution to a lot of that angst and anxiety is not thinking about it, but acting. And the acting usually takes the form of something simple that we've all heard about, like getting out into nature, moving, going for a walk, doing some breath work, having an interaction with another person, moving towards the problem, or actually implementing one of the solutions, if any of the solutions, just taking an action and moving forward. But usually the simplest way is just to move, just to get out of the environment, to walk, to become a part of nature. The science behind this that Huberman would talk about is that when you're anxious and have anxiety and you feel overwhelmed, you're triggering the sympathetic nervous system. So you're triggering the fight or flight system. And the more you think about it, your body or your brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between you thinking about a problem and you actually facing the problem. So you think about a tiger mauling you to death and you're going to have an elevated heart rate and you're going to start to sweat and you're going to start to get a dry mouth because your body doesn't know, is this actually real or is it in your head, man? So triggering that autonomic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system. He also talks about the amygdala as well, which is the emotional regulation center of the brain. So you become very emotionally driven. Everything is more emotional and less logical. So you're not actually seeing the problem for what it is. You're seeing it through the filter of fear or pain or insufficiency or anxiety or overwhelm or whatever it is. So it's magnified. So all of a sudden you're completely out of the logical realm because you keep trying to think and you're thinking deeper into this problem as opposed to stepping back and removing yourself from the problem. And the simple solution is obviously go for a walk, do a bit of movement, get out into nature, change the environment, whatever. So for me, that's been a huge lesson for me this year because I would really try and overthink most things that come into my life. I'm a real overthinker, which means I end up coming to the wrong conclusion almost every single time because I'm way deep in the emotional level of this. So this year was probably the first year I've actually systematically implemented when I started to get really, really overwhelmed. It's not the same system every time, but it usually involves focusing a little bit more on my movement. So either immediately getting up and going for a walk or doing some push-ups or doing some breath work or just getting out of the situation, getting out of my own head, making sure that I have the slightly bigger keystone habits in place. I'm like, is my sleep working really well here? So I'm not trying to think about the problem. Like maybe the problem is that I'm tired and it's making this problem seem like more than it is. So I try and focus on those things, my nutrition and my eating well. Is there other stuff going on in my life? Back to the reflection piece. But I'm not trying to specifically think about the problem anymore a lot of the time. Sometimes I'm still getting really wound up by it. But it's actually really, what it's really done for me is my recovery time from the anxiety has drastically improved. So if I had a big issue before, I could be days or weeks overwhelmed and anxious. And now it's probably a couple of hours just because I just move or change the context for myself.
And does it give you like more insight or information if you do that in terms of the problem?
Most of the time, it dramatically reduces the severity of the problem in my own head, and that immediately brings the emotions back down. I just feel way calmer, and then the solutions start to appear maybe I should talk about this with Brian or Jill, or maybe I should go to my dad, or maybe this actually wasn't a problem. Or do you know what? Maybe I'll just do the thing anyway. And 99% of the time, geez, that wasn't it. I had this situation today. It was just something I really wasn't looking forward to. It was actually turned out really positively. So now I've started to learn that if you just relax and don't overthink it, all of the energy you've put into overthinking it, you can now actually focus on the task. And because the task is way easier or not as bad as you thought it was going to be, it's a double effect. You have more energy put into it, and it's not as bad as you thought it was. So you're not wasting all that energy and all that time on it. But the biggest thing is not trying to think about the problem too much. I'm not saying don't think about your problems at all. And my granddad used to have a saying, my dad's dad, and he said 99 out of 100 of the things you're worrying about aren't going to happen. And the one other thing is going to happen anyway. So what the fuck are you worrying about? And I was like, it's easy to say that, but a more practical solution for me is when the problem arises, maybe go for a walk. Maybe go and play with the kids or do something a little bit different. And just try and remove your head from the problem for a minute, gain a bit more perspective, give yourself a bit of separation and space, and then you can come back to it at a later time. And it works almost every single time.
That's great. Now as well, because you're busy, we'll say, with work, with clients, you're growing the business, you got kids.
Yeah.
Is there more likely to be like bigger problems or more occurrence of something like this happening? So something like this lesson for you is going to be key to move forward and grow and develop.
Bigger problems, I'm not 100% sure. More volume, because there's a lot more going on. Definitely, yeah. There's just a lot more happening, a lot more going on, and a lot more to distract you from the current situation. So there's this big problem. I'm going to think about this really hard, but then there's another big problem. And now I've got two big problems. So I'm kind of distracted from both of them, but I'm also thinking about both of them. So I'm not really present in both of them. So I'd say there's just more of them. And actually, just an interesting add-on, which isn't on my list here, but an add-on to that is this idea of taking the hand off the rudder a little bit. So rather than trying to overthink this problem and solve every specific one as it comes, maybe just let go of the rudder. Maybe just let it freewheel for a while, and the big ones that are going to be problems will present themselves. Take care of that, and then move forward. Like just take it as it comes. Connor, actually, I don't know if he's here yet. Did I see him working in there now? He has a saying for this, which I'm going to ask him for after the podcast, and maybe like his podcast, but something to do with waves or something like that. But it's whatever the next thing is. Just allow your hand to come off. Don't try and steer at every single one. Allow your hand off the rudder, and whatever comes up next, you can manage that, but don't overthink it.
It's funny because as you're talking there, it's almost like emotions as well. Because this is not on my list, but like, as opposed to trying to create a story or narrative around what you're feeling, maybe just feeling it,
Yeah.
and not trying to actually understand it consciously. And again, even just what you're saying there is like, you're not necessarily trying to find the answer to the problem. You're just trying to act and allow itself to kind of unravel almost.
Yeah.
And be.
And this isn't a solution for finding solutions. This is a way to not overthink.
Yes.
And to manage your emotions a little bit better. I think that's what I found anyway. It's helped me with my emotional regulation a little bit more. And like I said, it's reduced my recovery time. So I just recover much quicker. I come back to center much quicker than before. Whereas before I could overthink a problem for days, weeks, maybe not months, but a long time. And and everything suffers. Whereas now, freak out for maybe an hour or two, go for a walk, go do a bit of training, speak to somebody about it, take action, do something. And then like, oh, do you know what? Actually, I feel much better now.
Yes.
And you just get on with so much more of your life than I would have before. So it's not that I'm solving these problems much quicker. I'm just getting on with more of my life.
Yes.
Because I'm not being overwhelmed by the anxiety all the time.
That's a great realization.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. It's a big one. So to bring it back to something practical that maybe the listener can use, I'm not saying don't overthink things, because that's a real trigger for some people. I'm just saying when you start to feel that anxiety, when you start to feel that heat coming up in the neck and you're getting a bit overwhelmed, like do the simple things. It's cliched. It works so well. Go for a walk. Get out of the environment. Stop thinking about the problem for a while. Like this way, sleep on it for two reasons. One, you obviously get the whole regeneration of the brain overnight, the lymphatic drainage and all that. So you're a better thinker in the morning, but also it gives you a break away from the problem for a while. Like sleep on it. Just take a break away from the problem. You can't take your way out of a thinking problem. So move, take action.
I love it. Great takeaway. I'll go my second one.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, my second one for 2023 is this idea around gratitude and then / suffering as well. But let me give you a quote a quote that I have here that I was writing on this year. It is only through the unpleasant trials and tribulations that we can win the innumerable battles in life and eventually grow up.
Where's that quote come from?
Again, I don't know where, I don't have who has these quotes. I'll be writing them
References,
all year. I know.
References.
But I don't say who has them because I write on them for a good week or two. So I don't know who that was. So apologies, whoever said that. But the idea with this, of the trials and tribulations of life, okay? So I actually went on a psilocybin journey a few weeks ago. because I was struggling.
For those who don't know, what's psilocybin?
Mushroom journey. I went down to a shaman. We go to a great place that holds space for myself, anyone who goes down to, with great intention to understand yourself more. And I went down because I was actually struggling to viscerally feel gratitude. And actually was part of Telos for the whole month. So it was really in my purview. I was sitting down. I was trying to put in these practices of gratitude of my life. And I am grateful, but there seemed like a blockage for me to fully accept this kind of gratitude. So during the journey, I had many different experiences, but what came up was, well, number one, gratitude. So I felt gratitude for my life. Like I viscerally felt it, and it was amazing. Like I just pure love and gratefulness for who I am, for what I have, for what I'm doing. It was genuinely like, it was phenomenal. And it went on for quite a while. I'd say, I don't know, half an hour. I came out of the journey and I was buzzing. I was like, this is amazing. Oh my God. And I went back in again. So when I came out of it, blindfold off, I'm kind of alive. I went back in for another journey. And the journey this time was one of gratitude, but behind that gratitude was pain. And I cried nonstop for about half an hour, 60 minutes. And I just remember convulsing of pure pain, but behind that pain was gratitude. And what that pain was the last, I don't know, year, 5, 6, 7, 8 of me building my business, building my life, and having these internal angst and questioning, am I good enough? Am I going to fail? What am I doing? And actually realizing that through all of that was what I've done right now. I'm so grateful for that suffering, for that hardship, for that difficulty. And what it taught me was this, like that quote right there, like through the unpleasant trials and tribulations of the innumerable battles that we're going to face in life will eventually kind of grow up. So what I kind of realized that this idea of suffering is what it's all about. And it's not necessarily about more or the goal or the progression, but this suffering is something to be embraced, to be extremely grateful for. And you said to me as well, I don't know when it was, a few weeks ago, but like, we get to do this. I get to do this. Like, that is a reframe. I get to be a dad. I get to go and work out. I get to build a business. Because all these things are really difficult, and oftentimes you don't want to do them, or you're a little bit fearful. But I can't believe that gratitude I got was from all that suffering and internal angst that I've had for years. And maybe probably never fully embraced. But fuck me, pink, it was amazing. It was unbelievable. And I suppose what I'm looking towards for 2024, and what I'm just going to say to the listener maybe, is that this idea of, like, you know, being more proactive in our suffering. And again, maybe go back to your, like, say no framework, and it's difficult. Building awareness around how you're living and who you are. Are you truly doing what you want to do? And Jesus, man, through that psilocybin journey, I am living how I want to live. I'm doing what I want to do. But there's more suffering to come. So like, embrace that suffering. You know, pressure is a privilege. Like, lean into that. And then through that is that kind of gratitude practice. So for me, this idea of kind of gratitude and suffering, and I'm explaining it here without fully actually understanding it myself, because I've only just recently experienced this. But I can just see myself now, the gratitude and the suffering, and amalgamating the two in a much more intentful manner.
Well, what I'm getting from you here as a listener, so hopefully this is what's coming across in the podcast as well, is maybe finding a way to be able to reframe these things. Maybe that's what we can practically do, because maybe everyone can't go and do a psilocybin journey and stuff like that. But that is a tool for helping us to understand and reframe and gain perspective. I feel anyway, you get a lot of perspective. It doesn't fix or change anything. It gives you different perspective on things.
Yes.
And it's like this idea of pain and suffering we've spoken about before. I won't go too deep into it, but pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So your perspective on this challenge and this life is everything. How you view this, I get to do this, is a perspective that most of us don't have, because it's a subjective thing. Like, no one wants to go training in the dark and playing football. I think about this every single day now, almost, and it's only the last 4 or 5 months I'm thinking about this. Driving to train, it's freaking freezing. I'm like, but I get to do this. Some people have no car. Some people have no legs. Some people don't live in a country where they know what football is because they're starving and there's a dictatorship and there's war. And I get to do this, driving my comfy car with my belly full to play football with my friends. Like, what the fuck am I complaining about? But I also am very compassionate towards the fact that it's subjective too. This is always, you only know the life that you live. So compared to sitting at home in the warm watching TV, this is a very difficult thing to do. but being able to reframe for yourself all of these different areas of your life. So I think maybe that would be the challenge. This is just what I'm getting. You can correct me now if I'm missing the point here a little bit, but the challenge would be, and the strategy would be, any area of your life where you feel like you are struggling or suffering, is there a way, maybe there's not, but is there a way you could reframe that makes it a positive, that makes it bearable, that changes the frame that you've currently built around it? Because again, you said it before, most of it's just a story we've told ourselves about what this particular thing is. Is there a way we can tell ourselves a different story? So nothing has actually changed except our perspective on it, but that changes our lived experience. Is our perspective.
I think as well, what I'm trying to get at here, because again, I'm trying to unpack it myself, but like this idea of the struggle, of the hardship that we all experience. And again, that internal angst, like, is it good enough, or can I do it? Or, there's gratitude in that, and why you want to keep leaning in. And again, to try to sit with that and understand that there's actually on the other side of this is real, visceral, like love and gratitude and acceptance. Yeah. And maybe that's what it's all about. There's a true transformation there. And even this, I have another quote that I was writing, and again, I don't know who said this, but the idea being, do not cripple and paralyze yourself voluntarily when you have a chance to transform your future. And again, like, we experience hardship. Like, it's really difficult. Again, you just use a gym as the analogy. Again, of going in and pushing yourself. To have that adaptation, you have to stress yourself. And you can get lost in the hardship of life. But again, life is difficult. So can we sit with in that kind of gratitude of the difficulty of it all?
And we get to pick our difficulty.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So there's more to come for next year.
There's a lot more to come for next year. That was a great point. I think we're bang on time as well with this fucking podcast, which is absolutely outrageous.
Well, you're on time, son.
Okay, so our last one each.
Yes.
Another big one. Your network and your support system is everything. So I did say when you were making your previous point that this linked in. What's your previous point?
Yep.
Your network and your support system is everything.
Was this a keystone habit? Like, is that what you said? Was that what it was?
Not your keystone habit, but this idea of being able to reflect and having self-awareness, which is very, very difficult to do, but having a support system makes that a lot easier.
Okay.
So I'll develop that concept now in a second. This one is, again, I'll use my lived experience for this. I'm so lucky to have had massive and major support in every element of my life. So this is not me saying that you should do this and you should have this. Some people don't have great support. But if there is a way for you to build a network around yourself to support yourself, this is what I would do. All of the decisions in my life have been made easier by having somebody to give me some reference and some perspective, to link in with our last point, on what that decision is. People to hear what I'm thinking, for me to be able to, first of all, for me to be able to vocalize the thoughts that are in my head, get that out to somebody, and for them to be able to give me another perspective on it, or to give me some input and guidance, part one. Part two, to be able to call on the experience of people who've done what I'm trying to do, and for them to be able to guide me through some of the more difficult challenges that I've faced. And part three, some unconditional support from friends and family that has given me the confidence to kind of go, do you know what, I'm going to give this particular thing a crack, or I'm going to be able to move forward with this, or I know I can do this challenging thing because I've got this network here to catch me, and they support me no matter what it is I do. That, for me, it's something I think about really, really often, how blessed I am to have these people. There's two elements to this, right? One, I have a fantastic family, amazing partner, and they've allowed me to be able to do what I do. And number two, I've now surrounded myself with people who also support me and offer massive value to me. And I offer my own value my way to them. You'd be one of those people, and people who I work with and clients that come in, I have surrounded myself with the type of people I know will elevate me, and I could potentially help elevate them as well. So the takeaway and the learning from this is, a lot of us, myself included, due to our ego, will try and do our things, try and do things by ourselves. Maybe we're afraid of other people seeing us fail. Maybe we're afraid of being vulnerable. And maybe we genuinely believe we don't need anybody. With a lone wolf, we want to go out there. And some people do operate better on their own in certain situations. However, as social humans, as social beings, I suppose, social animals, I think it is a no-brainer to actively look to create a network around yourself of people who will elevate you, who'll support you, who'll love you, who'll give you unconditional love, but who'll also give you the feedback, the soundboard, the kind of the hard slap of reality when you need it as well. It can really, really help you stay the course in so many different areas of your life. That's been a massive kind of, not a learning for me as such this year, but a takeaway again this year. It's almost every year I think about this and how grateful I am to have such a great network around me, both through the people who I have circumstantially through family or whatever, through birth, been surrounded by, and then people have actively decided to put around myself. So if some people ask me like, what would you do if you were starting a business? Or what would I do if I doing this? I'm like, find people who will support your journey in whatever that looks like. It could be the tough love thing. It could be the unconditional love thing. It could be the guidance and the experience and the mentorship. It could be the business and the knowledge, and it could be all of those things. But look for those people. And the practical advice that I would share if people ask me, how do I do this? Is I call it have coffee. Reach out, start conversations with people. I think we mentioned this before on one of our podcasts. Reach out, actively look to put yourself in positions where you can have conversations with people, where you can share your thoughts and your interests and your passion, your ideas, and get some feedback from people. And inevitably, at some point during that journey, someone's going to say, you should talk to Bob. Yeah, Bob is the perfect person. You should go and talk to Bob, because that sounds like exactly. And then you meet Bob, and Bob is like, man, we should have met 2 years ago. Man, I've done this all before. And you're like, oh my God, Bob's the best thing. So that kind of thing happens really regularly. It's very, very common, but you have to be proactive in it, I've found. And then with the conditional thing, maybe you don't have a supportive family. Maybe you don't have a spouse who's in a position to be able to be unconditional in love with you or whatever. But in that situation, what I've found is to give it before you take it. Give it before you look for it back. So I've tried to learn to be a better person, and that's improved the quality. I know I already had good relationships, but it's improved the quality of those relationships. I've tried to give back and be better, and that has resulted in just a blooming of my relationships.
Almost like being of service in terms of that relationship. Like
exactly. And I actually mentioned this to you, and I think I talked about this in one of our podcasts, one of my psilocybin journeys. That was a big thing for me. Like be of service. Don't try and be the leader or be the man or be the guy. Serve your friends and family. And that's all you need to worry about. And then when I started to do that, or tried to do that at least, it comes back tenfold. And you don't do it for it to come back tenfold, but it's just that law of reciprocity. Like you just create goodwill, and you get all this love and support back, which is beautiful.
It's a funny one as well, because obviously we are like, I'll talk about in the business realms, but like people just believe that people have it sussed or have it sorted and don't have that same fear or that angst, or again, that question of, what am I doing? Is it right? Is it good? Is it different? And you said it a couple of times, the connection.
Yeah.
You're just trying to be open and honest and go, this is who I am. And we're all much more similar than we are different. And then having that connection, and again, looking at someone across the way going, oh, fuck, you think the same, feel the same way. That there's great power in that.
Yeah,
there really is great power in that.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's surprising if you can just be that open and honest with somebody, and they give it back to you, you'll be like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's class. So that's unbelievable.
So that's my takeaway from that last point. Actively try and surround yourself with people who are going to elevate you, whether it's business, personal life, whatever, and be of service in your kind of existing community. Be of service.
I love that.
Yeah.
Will I go?
Yes.
My last one?
Your last one.
Well, my last one then is funny because it's a similar kind of guys, I suppose, but Naval quote.
Go on, Naval.
Yeah. Making decisions for your future self is a superpower.
Okay.
So if you even just look at that last one there, then it's kind of like, if you're trying to be open, honest, and vulnerable, you're just trying to, again, think of where you want to be or how you want to live, or, what kind of life you want to lead in, say, this time next year. And you're making a decision today for that. Because I talked to you about off podcast on this idea of maturity. And again, I had a few quotes. I don't know who this is because I was writing them over the last year.
God. You're going to have to send these over to me. I'll put them in the show notes.
Okay. Maturity is the ability to handle things with serenity when things fall apart. And with maturity, one foregoes short-term gains, one opts for long-term gains. So I said to you off podcast, this idea of like, what is the answer? And I'm kind of not too sure. And all you're really trying to do is, number one, is live your life. I think the more that you live your life, the more experience that you have, and you kind of understand what you want. And then you kind of find that people are themselves, again, either struggling or again, doing their very best. But if you can look at this idea of like looking at the long term for what we want today, it's easier then, I think, to make a decision that we know we have to make, because most of our suffering has come from avoidance. I'm not doing the thing that we should do.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. But if you do want to have that progress or step forward into that, it's about making that decision today. And I didn't realize that's what maturity is. Maturity is just making a decision for your long-term self. And Naval seeing that as a superpower is just crazy to me, because like it is a superpower, because it's such a hard thing to do in a world where you're just constantly distracted or being pulled, or again, go back to, you are externalizing what other people are doing or where they're at. And yet it's like, no. What do you want? Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to live? So it's just about making decisions for next year, today.
Delayed gratification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then my question to you then, because this is something that I've been asking, why is that so difficult? Why is it difficult to delay gratification and make decisions for our long-term selves, as opposed to just falling into old habits or again distracting ourselves?
I think if you hit the two biggest ones there, habits is definitely one. Like you can have as many negative habits as you can have positive habits. So I think we're just in the habit of it's the way life has developed now. We have a lot more access. Everything is easier, and we're in the habit of make decision A and outcome B happens immediately. I think we've lost the ability to be patient. I think that's a big issue. I think a lot of the time we don't have to wait for anything now. Like we're trained to not have to wait for anything. You want the latest show, pop on Netflix and watch 10 episodes of it. You want a biscuit, go to the shop and get 1,000 biscuits. We don't have to learn patience anymore. So I think that's a major part of it. I think you mentioned this distraction there. I think a huge part of our life is trying to mask the pain that we feel as human beings, existential pain. So I think we fall into these patterns of constantly consuming and never actually, this is what we said at the start, never actually taking time to sit and think and reflect. What will this outcome be? We're driven by impulse now. We're just constantly driven by impulse. The impulse to eat, the impulse to consume, the impulse to stimulate, the impulse to distract, the impulse to drown the pain and the existential angst and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's a I don't think there's a black and white answer. It's a combination of all those things. And I think because we are human beings, we're extremely adaptive, which means we can adapt to the easy life very quickly as well. So we've just adapted to the easy life, which means we don't really have to think about the future, because all we really have to think about is right now, because we can kind of get everything we want right now. So why would we ever really think about the future? That's a generalization, but I feel like in most people's lives, that's a part, at least a part of their life. So I think that's maybe why we struggle so much. It's hard, like to overcome all that. I'm not saying it flippantly. All those things are legitimate and happening right now. It's who we are right now. So unless we can be aware of that, I think it's going to be very, very hard to plan for the future. They do it with kids, the marshmallow test.
Yes.
Like we'd all failed the marshmallow test now, because I'm like, there's a fucking box of celebrations there. I'm after eating 10. Like, I didn't think about, well, would future me want this? Probably not, because I'm into my fitness and my health, and I'm into all these things. But fuck, man, there's marshmallow there. Like, I'm gonna eat 10 celebrations right there.
But it's a funny one, though, I suppose. Then in that sense, I think, like for me, responsibility, again, go back to kids. I think it's easier for me to look at the long term, because again of who I want to be, and again how I'm living. And then I suppose you then are seeing these kids who you are nurturing or teaching.
Yeah.
Again, how are they going to act? How are they going to live?
That's a great point. That's actually been probably a change I've noticed in that you're now thinking outside of yourself.
Yes.
So you're not even thinking about what would future Dan think.
Yeah.
Like, will future Dan even be here for my 3 kids? Like, so yeah, that's a big change that has helped me reframe, put a different frame on that. It's not necessarily for me. And it's a big one that hits me all the time. Like, you put up a post a good while ago, and I remember you got a good response off it. We shot it actually, didn't we? Don't be fit for yourself, be fit for your kids, or something like that. Don't be healthy for yourself, be healthy for your kids.
Oh yes, you said you die for your kids. Would you be healthy for your kids?
Would you be healthy for your kids? Yeah. So now you're able to externalize that, but that's also a problem. It's Irish mammy syndrome, because you're taking care of everybody else over yourself. But at least that one could potentially.
Well, again,
have
but you could still
outcome.
reframe that in the sense that I'm going to make long-term decisions that benefit myself, and leverage and use my kids as
the reason, as the excuse.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. And I even go back to me with alcohol. The reason I did give up alcohol genuinely deep down was to be a better parent. So that was a big factor for me getting rid of alcohol, I'd say, in my life. So again, trying to leverage and use Sailor and Gigi so I can actually genuinely be more present and again progress. So this idea of just making long-term decisions, whilst they are difficult, and again, there is some suffering there. We'll go back to that, but that is pressure, that's privilege. You know, I get to do this, because again, go back to that. People don't have this opportunity of saying no to things. You know, they don't have the opportunity, and there is so much abundance around us that you can kind of get lost in the fucking noise.
Yeah,
and it's just
here's the ultimate catch-22 of what you just said there. You can use your kids as an excuse. So have loads of kids and you become an absolute superhuman because you're using your kids as an excuse to be a better person. Except when you have loads of kids, you don't get any sleep. You eat like shit. You can't go to the gym.
Well, even though it's not a funny one though, because when you talk about kids, then and then it's like a dad bod. Like it kind of goes this realm, like, oh, this happens, so now this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But again, it's
a fallacy, like.
Yeah, but it is. But of course, so it is easier to make that decision because you are sleeping less. All these things are difficult, but that doesn't have to be the only option. There's plenty more options that you can have.
Yeah, and there are harder options.
Of course.
But it doesn't mean there's no options.
No.
It's not a given. Yeah, not a given at all.
But again, for me, just again, moving into 37 years of age, I do want to keep progressing. And there's going to be more difficult decisions that I have to make. There's more burning of the old self, like I said, that you have to do, which is difficult. So if I want to, again, keep living and keep progressing, I've got to make sure that I am delaying that gratification in many avenues of my life.
Yeah.
So that my takeaway, I suppose, for the listener, deep down, is that, again, Naval's quote, making decisions for your future self is a superpower. So can you make decisions for your future self in 2024 that are going to benefit you, essentially, and allow you to progress?
Beautiful. To take this one home. Overarching sentiments for 2023. Are you happy? Was it a good year?
Yeah, well, I mentioned there that second point around gratitude. Yeah, again, I think I said this last year as well. It was a difficult year. There were lessons there was pain, there was angst, But no, overall, yeah, definitely. I'm extremely grateful for who I am and where I'm at. But similar then to our takeaways from last year, I do want to move into 2024 with more focus, with more action. Like, again, I feel like I've progressed this year, definitely. And I want to continue that to a different level again next year.
Yeah.
How about you?
I feel it's a funny one, right? I feel this is probably the most chaotic year I've ever had.
Okay.
Chaos and busyness and lots of stuff going on. However, it's probably one of the first years I've come to the end of the year with a sense of calm, a sense of peace, and a sense of, okay, this felt like a productive year. Not just like I got loads done, but a productive year in terms of I was moving in the direction I wanted to move. I feel like it was a net positive year in terms of the movement. My relationships were better. The business is better. The network is better. And I'm not judging it based on these metrics, but just overall, everything was moving in the right direction. I didn't really achieve any of the things that I'm planning on achieving, but I'm moving in the right direction, and I feel a sense of calm in the chaos, which is mad because it's most especially this period right now as we're recording this, like we want to talk about it here.
Yeah,
it's madness.
And will that chaos calm down for 2024?
Maybe not, but the lessons I'm learning are, even if it doesn't matter, because you can find calm in the chaos. You can be the calm in the chaos, and like to one of my points earlier on, like don't just whatever the next thing is. I think I kind of did walk in here, and I'll ask him afterwards. I think it's the alligators. What's the nearest alligator to the boat? I think is the quote, but.
Well, I think you've explained it there, though. I think as humans as well, it doesn't have to be all gone plain sailing or to plan, but I do think progress is kind of key. Fundamentally, if you're progressing in some avenues of your life, I think you can reflect on the year gone by and go,
And it doesn't have to be hustle culture progress.
No.
It could be the quality of your relationship could improve, or whatever, or your sense of peace within yourself or something. It could be quite obscure. But yeah, progress, I think, is part of human nature.
Well, then my final question to you would be, like, because we talked about our podcast.
Ask questions on this podcast.
Well, I'm going to do it now. 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Again, are we still kind of this idea of reflecting and progressing?
I think to make this again a bit more abstract, I think in 10 years' time, if we're still having conversations like this, I think we're in the right place. I think we're still talking about reflecting, and we're still like this process is a reflection process for us.
Yeah.
Even if we do nothing else, we planned for this podcast and we sat down and we did this podcast, which is a form of reflection for me and you that we're doing and being accountable to people. So even if we do nothing else, which we are planning on doing, but even if we do nothing else, this was a success because we reflected over the year of 2023.
Yeah.
If we're still doing this in 10 years' time, no matter what we've achieved financially or business-wise or relationship-wise, I think it will be a success.
I agree. I have nothing to add to that. That's brilliant. I think it's class, man. Yeah, 100%.
Well, perfect. Like I actually think we hit this. I can't see the time there. I think we hit this
60 minutes, bang on point.
I think we're 55 minutes into this recording, which is we've under-recorded this one.
Oh my God.
But I had a really long intro, so that'll make it 60 minutes. But Mr. Loughlin, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Big shout out to Victor and James in the background here. James doing the BTS.
This is phenomenal, by the way. This is the start of something.
This is the very start of something that's going to be. It's already magic.
But it's huge. This is massive for 2024. Like, keep an eye out.
Yeah. Watch the space, as they say.
Boom.
Peace.
Thank you.